Welcome to Workforce Accessibility for All Ages, a webinar series brought to you by the Age-Friendly Greater Pittsburgh Workforce Group. This webinar series seeks to cover successes, challenges, and resources job seekers might experience or need in re-entering or re-engaging the workforce. This series is an effort to create an equitable as well as equal workforce in Allegheny County as well as the city of Pittsburgh.
Today's episode centers around staying safe and protecting yourselves while on the job. And today we have two lovely guests that I will give a few minutes to introduce yourselves. Patty and Nick, please.
Good morning. I am Patricia Pring. I am the Career Services Manager at the CareerLink, located at the Allegheny East office in Forest Hills.
And I'm Nick Niedermeyer, WEO Program Manager for the Downtown Pittsburgh CareerLink.
What protocols should job seekers look for at employment sites regarding COVID-19 mediation and healthy and safe workplaces?
We always tell our customers to refer to the CDC guidelines to get a comfort level of what the standards are so that they aren't asking to go above or have the proper expectations. So in this current environment, wearing a mask, continuous social distancing, and then also reach out to the person that you're meeting with and asking them what their protocol is. So you identify from that employer or the organization what guidelines they have already established and set in place.
Beautiful.
So kind of along those same lines, have you seen any sort of unwillingness of people to re-enter the workforce or to work in environments where maybe COVID protections are not in place?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, I was going to say, yes, we have. We've gotten a number of people who've expressed health concerns, be it we're vaccinated, we're just not sure we want to go, we're not vaccinated, I don't want to go anywhere. Or we've even had people who are reluctant to re-enter the workforce because they've spent so much time out of work. Their dynamic on a personal level has shifted. So it's two incomes have suddenly become one, with kind of a stay-at-home parent situation. A one-person income can say, well, I figured out I can swing everything I need to do on part-time. It gives me more time for family and activities and all of the other bits, pieces, and parts. So we've had people make lifestyle changes to this as well, not just I'm concerned about safety and well-being.
I agree with everything that Nick has said. We have seen at the other office, we've seen the same thing, regardless of COVID. I think that is a large piece of what's caused the individuals to make changes, but lack of daycare services right now are another issue that's caused those folks to reconsider if they're going to go one family income or work part-time, however that case may be. But coming back to your original question, Charles, about finding folks that are resistant or hesitant to re-enter the workforce, there are people that are looking to change careers because they don't want to experience some of the things that they've seen at home. They want to feel that they're in a safe environment. We've seen an uptick for the request to work at home, remote work. And sometimes that requires some skill training, and other times they can transfer skills that they already have. So the workforce shift has changed dramatically due to COVID.
Awesome. So kind of piggybacking a little bit off of Charles's question, how can job seekers feel comfortable broaching the subject of PPE and appropriate protective measures with employers? Is this something that you feel like employees are ready to do? Is this more of something like a direct conversation that you're having with employers? Like, what are you noticing when it comes to having the conversation about protective measures?
We're typically asking the customer when they're ready to go on an interview. First, we ask if it's a remote interview or an in-person interview, because while the transition is happening right now, while we're seeing an increase in in-person interviews, there is still a tremendous amount of remote interviews. And we address that question. Are you comfortable having that conversation? You know, it is a direct question, because sometimes people don't think about that until they're actually in front of the employer. And so we try to prepare them for that conversation with the employer, and let them know that it is okay and it is acceptable to ask the employer directly. You know, what guidelines do you have established? What do you have in place? And what is your practice? Okay. And then if it's an on-site interview, we also ask them, when you're on site, ask those same questions, but then be more observant as you're walking from the entrance to where the interview is. What you're hearing, does it align to what you're hearing? Because we all can talk, but when we see the practical application of things, it may or may not be different. You know, so watching, hearing, and seeing are all those things that we have to be careful that we're making our customers, I want to say, educate the customers on it, because within our family and things become comfortable, or even going to the store right now, things are, you know, becoming comfortable. So making that awareness, you know, making the customer aware is something that we really focus on.
Yeah, and we're doing identical here. I have absolutely nothing to add to what Patty's just said. I think she said it better than I could. Thank you.
So, you know, just to sort of dovetail on some of that, you know, how have you seen employers sort of react to some of these issues that you brought up, like, you know, potential childcare needs and protection and mitigation needs on site? Like, are you seeing employers across the board react affirmatively to some of the changes that their potential employees need in order to be safe and comfortable in their workplaces, or to mitigate some of their outside circumstances?
I'll jump in here for a second. We've seen some, it's hard to say that all employers are doing anything. Some employers are very open and receptive to change. Some are not as much. There are some that we've even heard they'll talk a nice game, but when we're walking through a facility, they're observing everybody not paying a bit of attention to the rules that were just explained. It said, well, this is our standard and protocol, but we're doing something completely different. You know, so I hate to use the term your mileage may vary, but it very much so is an employer to employer situation.
I agree with everything Nick said. I think it even goes further from employer, but industry to industry, because of the need for employees. Depending on the industry, I can say that some employers are very flexible and understanding, and I think they're understanding because the need is so severe for employees that they're willing to work around a person's schedule. For example, if it's two families with children, they're willing to work around that. I don't have daycare, but I can work these hours. In other situations, they're not. So again, to Nick's point, it's employer to employer.
And because some of this conversation is geared specifically a little more towards an older workforce participants, to our older workforce, do any of these things that we're talking about change when we're talking about that particular kind of demographic? Like, are some of these concerns more pronounced for older folks, or in any of the other like sort of age groups or demographics that you may encounter?
From what we have seen, that it affects the older audience, in that they're babysitters. It's grandparents who are babysitting, who are caregivers. So the question and the concerns become, where has so-and-so been? For example, you're watching your daughter's children who is a nurse in a hospital. You know, those have become concerns that we've heard, to the point where some of the certain industries, we're finding that individuals are leaving because of those concerns, and they don't feel comfortable leaving their children with grandma or grandpa, or the sitter that they had, because they want to protect that audience, you know, in that age range, so to speak.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. We've seen that piece of it. We've also seen people that have tried to take remote positions only to find they're in over their head on technology.
Mhm. Yes.
Because suddenly I understand how to use a computer and the basic functions. Throw Zoom into the mix, throw Teams video. There are so many platforms right now for working virtually. Even AWS, Amazon Workspace, creates its own computer within a computer, and it's very difficult for someone with baseline technology skills to understand. You know, so there is that piece as well.
So this is kind of shifting gears just a little. When it comes to employers and having those kind of conversations with employers, I know there's, it seems like there's a mixed bag now of vaccine mandates or lack thereof. Some of them are coming from higher up, and some of them are more internal slash grassroots. Are you noticing that's affecting clients' desire to go back? And on that same, this is kind of two-pronged, on that same end, are you noticing employers are not requiring vaccines? Is this something that's creating reluctance to hire folks? What are you noticing?
From my perspective, where we are with our employers and our prospective employees, we have noticed a reluctance of people to go back to work based upon vaccine mandates. I can't really speak to employers and their hiring needs and their practices because, in fairness, I hear secondhand from somebody who's been to a job interview. It's not from, again, I'm doing kind of program side of things, less the business side of things. So I work particularly with job seekers, less with employers.
I agree with Nick. We are hearing varying things about the vaccination. You hear it in extreme both ways. I'm first one in line, or nobody's going to jab me, and all the reasons and the support for each statement. I'm the first in line and all those reasons, or I'm not going to get it and all the reasons. From, again, to Nick's point, secondhand, the conversations that I had with the business service team about the employers is there is not as much, it varies industry to industry on whether the employer is requiring their staff and their employees to be vaccinated. There is definitely some individuals who are looking at employers who are either requiring the vaccination or employers who are not requiring the vaccination but have good safety guidelines in place. So it's a very individualized preference, and we hear it from our customers.
So how do we coach people through this? Because it really is sort of treacherous ground, right? You know, and especially because of the way some of these polarities have been kind of exacerbated in certain ways. You know, we have folks that have obvious, you know, issues at home. People need to work. People need to be able to put food on the table. How do we help people navigate this kind of space successfully?
I think the first step for anyone sticking their toe in this proverbial water should be understand what is most important to you and be sure that you find an employer that aligns with what is important to you. Be it, I need flexibility for childcare. I hope I work in an environment where everybody's wearing masks, staying at least 6 feet away from each other, and everybody's vaccinated, and we're going to be very cautious about things. And if we get some of the other side of the spectrum too, that goes, well, I really don't care if my number's up, my number's up. It's been fun. I'm just going to go about living my life. And I don't mind if I'm rubbing shoulders with everybody. You know, but again, we deal in extremes sometimes with very little middle ground. The best place for a job seeker to find themselves in that position with a solid understanding of what their requirements are and find the employer accordingly.
Definitely agree with everything Nick said. I think if anything, to Nick's point, I think it's been exaggerated even more since COVID. Prior to COVID, it would be, I'm looking for this job, not concerned about the industry. I want to be an administrative assistant. I don't care which industry I'm in. Now it's, I want, for example, I don't want to be in healthcare. I don't want to be in a veterinary's office. I don't, and I'm, as customers state, sometimes they can clearly state what they don't want better than what they want. So through process of elimination, it's, I get the message then that, so you really don't want to be front facing with customers on a daily basis. So we're looking at a back office type role. Is that what you're thinking about? And then the light bulb goes off, and then we can get more information and sort of guide them into what they're really looking for. The other thing is if they have specific companies in mind. Also going on that website and seeing most websites do have a little bit of COVID guidelines on them now. They're pretty good about that. So if the customer doesn't have that technology to navigate and look up that information, we can do that for them and read specifically what that says on the website and inform and educate them that way. Other customers come in and say, I want to work within 5 miles of my home. Well, what employers are there? You know, because that's my transportation. You know, the big thing before was I want to be on the bus line. You know, now it's, well, I want to be in walking distance, you know, or I don't want to do a transfer. So I think some of those changes, it depends on the customer, how we navigate them. But I think the bottom line for all of the conversation is education. We try to make, you know, educate our customers. And I don't want to say give them the comfort level, but give them the confidence to ask the questions of the employer. I think that is key, that they do their research as well as then the confidence piece of this, because COVID was an unspoken word for a while, and now it's common ground.
Yeah, and I agree completely. Getting someone to a confident point where they can stand up for themselves, as opposed to eternally compromising out of desperation, is difficult but necessary.
So I have one more question, and it kind of circles and refers back to, I know you guys mentioned remote work with clients, and some clients are really looking for that. It seems like remote work clearly is becoming more and more commonplace, and might be continually until however long, you know, we can foresee it. So when it comes to clients that are interested in remote work, are you noticing that it's more of a hybrid option, or is it directly remote? Because I've noticed that in some cases it'll be part-time remote and part-time in person. Sometimes it's all remote. Like for the remote positions that are being offered right now, are you noticing that they're all one and not the other, or both, or?
I'm seeing a combination. Mostly it is hybrid, especially during the training period. It may be you're in the office 4 or 5 days during that training period. And when the employer can see you're able to fully function at home, then you're transitioned to working remotely. And the other piece that I've noticed is there's more flexibility on the employer side. Would you like to be in the office and work a couple days a week, or would you like to work remotely? That's a question that I've noticed more and more lately, and the responses from the customer vary too. But from the employers in the remote positions, I would have to, from my perspective, what we've seen, it varies. It varies, you know, hybrid, definitely. We're seeing a lot of hybrid. 2 days in the office, 2 or 3 days in the office, and the other 2 or 3 at home, you know, whichever the case may be. But a lot of times we're seeing, at least for the training component, you're in the office so that you can have that customer, that employee and staff interaction. and receive that one-on-one or group setting training. And group setting is social distancing in a classroom where it's sanitized, that type of group training. Other companies that we've seen are doing 100% virtual training. They send your equipment, you get everything delivered, you have somebody talk you through setting it up, and everything is done remote. So there's, from our perspective, there's no consistency. It varies industry, person.
Yeah, we have the same experience. One of the things that we've noticed is there are a lot of major Fortune 500 companies that are hiring fully remote workers. You just need to expand the job search beyond the boundaries of Allegheny County. So for example, we may need to start looking in Miami, Florida for somebody who wants to be a travel agent and work for a cruise line. We may need to get somebody from Los Angeles who wants to work in promotions. You know, we need to just expand that search outside of our immediate area, but the opportunities do exist.
Awesome.
And it's, Nick, to your point, that's a really good point, because what I have noticed is people are applying for jobs in Pittsburgh from outside the state and expecting that they are going to be fully remote.
And that sort of sets us up. I mean, that's kind of where we want to end up then. What do you all see as the sort of continuing trends, the kind of, what is a post-COVID reality going to look like, both for workers and for employers, do you think?
I don't think we know that yet. And I would say truly, maybe 6 weeks ago, I would have a better answer for you than I do today with the variant and the announcement of hospitals, not doing elective surgeries again. So I think that we're in that wave again where we don't know what tomorrow is going to be. 6 weeks ago, I would have said, I think that given that so many employers have given up real estate, that we're definitely going to have a lot more remote workers, and training is being increased at the employer level, which is really nice to see, because it does give those folks who have limited transportation an opportunity to get back in the workforce. But right now, from our perspective, I wouldn't be able to give you a good direct answer, because we're seeing the variant and the changes are daily again.
Yeah, and I agree. It's volatile, to put it nicely. Cautiously optimistic that the workforce is shifting to a more remote based. I think people are getting more out of their day by being able to work and live simultaneously, as opposed to, I'm in my space, and when this space is over, I'm going to this space, as opposed to, well, I can work and function at the same time.
Beautiful.
I think that you're absolutely right, Nick. What I've found with the one thing that I've noticed a big difference of is the employee or the customer who comes in, the type of conversation. They're not used to having face-to-face conversations anymore. And that, where the virtual platform was very uncomfortable in the beginning of COVID, now it's the face-to-face conversations where there has to be more introduction and more of the debriefing to make that individual comfortable having a face-to-face conversation. And I don't think that is COVID because of COVID. I think we've gotten so comfortable with the remote and virtual environment that some of the skills that we had being in person, those can be strengthened again. They need to be revisited. Others are just the opposite. I'm happy to be in the office. I'm happy to see people walk in the door, so it's a personal issue. It's a personal preference, but there's definitely a lot of shifts that affect workforce.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm definitely looking forward to kind of seeing what happens next. I think there's just been so many changes. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but at the same time, it does seem like it's been that long. So I think like it's interesting because I think the workforce in general, to both of your points, has shifted dramatically, and I think based on necessity in many ways, and I think in other ways safety. So I think that's kind of a central part of the work that we all do, making sure that clients have what they need, and that they're safe as well. So I have to thank both of you, Patty and Nick, for taking the time out to have this really great conversation. I'm still kind of thinking about what this means continually. So like I said, I appreciate both of you taking the time out and sharing your expertise.
Special thanks to the following organizations for their contributions to the webinar. There will be a one-pager including tips for all ages relating to the content that you have seen and heard during this webinar series. Please feel free to reach out to any of these organizations for more information.